Welcome to Pyrography 101 by Nell Anderson. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate all of your views and likes. As you can see with Pyrography, I started first with a bit of watered down acrylic. I highly recommend that you wear a mask while you're burning over any kind of materials on wood. For some safeties, I always recommend that you do not burn over pressure or chemical treated wood, on stained or sealed wood with finishes. So MDF is also a very, very dangerous material to wood burn, and I do not recommend it. If you can see that I'm using just one nib to create all the fur texture. And I look at the way that the cat's hair is growing, and that is the angle and the direction that I burn. This nib also is flat on the end, so I'm able to come in and create shadows where I need it and to darken areas. If I need to burn a larger area, I'll come in with a small little butane torch and I can come in and burn shadows around eyes and under the neck, or if I need to burn a larger area, such as the background. Now with this piece, I'm using curly maple, which is similar to the wood that they use to create guitars and violins with that beautiful kind of tiger striped, almost marbling. It's very easy to burn on. I sanded it to about 600 grit. And that allows no kind of rough, uneven surfaces and gives a much cleaner wood burning, so you don't have any pits or rough areas. Some other woods that I like to work with is sycamore, basswood, beech, and birchwood, maple, which is what this cat is on. Pine is a little sappy, you could still kind of work on it. Oak, and then I've done a few on olive wood that I really enjoy, but same thing, if the wood grain's really dark, the sap tends to kind of burn up. Comes to the surface and gets a little greasy on the end of the nib, and I have to come back and clean it with a steel brush. I did a couple pieces on cypress wood, and the cypress wood burned almost too well. It's a very soft kind of fibrous wood, so as I was burning, I was almost overburning in some areas, so I have to adjust my wood burning tool to lighten it up so I'm not creating too much of darks or pitted areas. While I'm burning over this watered down acrylic, I am wearing a mask, and it's got a filter on the side, so I'm not breathing in any of the fumes. I do not recommend any kind of wood burning at all whatsoever if you are using any kind of first-time materials without using a mask. Now over here, you can see I'm using a gel pen to come back and bring out highlights like little ear hairs, highlights on the nose, and the whiskers. So that's a nice little neat trick, and you can come back in with a wood burner with a very sharp pointed nib, and you can burn over those to create some darker hairs as well. So this cat, he's got some white whiskers and black. Around the chin, as you can see, I'm making sure I'm going in the direction of his chin and creating a nice kind of even direction. I didn't want to overburn because that is mostly a white area. A little history about pyrography. It's basically kind of free-handed art of decorating wood or other materials like leather with burn marks resulting from controlled application of a heated object such as a poker. Sometimes it was called poker art or wood burning. It's basically the same thing. Some of the first wood burnings were based off of Peru, and they basically had like heated up animal bones and were carving decorations on wooden amulets and beads. And pretty much from the 17th century, it picked up as called poker art. And then it became extremely popular in the 19th century when some people invented heating up basically kind of like a platinum little pin in a fire and then come back and drawing with it. And that was kind of neat because that's when they started coming out with different nibs that would be inserted into this pen that would get different kind of varieties of textures. So most of my pens, I have about maybe 20 different kinds of nibs that I use. So far, this looped one is my favorite. So I can tilt it sideways and get some really tiny, tiny hairs, or I can have it more on the flat shoveled base and get those good shadows. Pretty much after the gel pen, you can come back and touch it up with watercolor or acrylic. Some people come back with either oil or alcohol ink to bring out a pop of color. But so far, my favorite is either the gel pen and the colored pencils. So the eyes on this cat, I used colored pencils to kind of create a more luxurious depth in those eyes. I did do a recording of me working with the eyes and the top part of this cat's head, but I'm still learning this whole process, and the camera was overexposed with the light reflecting off the wood, and so it came out blurry and kind of washed out. So I figured I'd start with the second half and come in. So all together, from the top portion of the cat, it took me about an hour and a half. And the bottom portion, I did about 1 hour increments and recorded and then came back and edited this video. So all together with the wood burning, I believe I did about 4.5 hours, about 1 hour to sketch the cat, and about another hour to paint with the fur coming in with the different colors and the direction, so that as I'm wood burning, I know which way to tilt the nib. And so that really helps to kind of map out the areas, using the diluted acrylic. And then pretty much if I know I'm going to go black in some areas, like his stripes, I did not put any kind of paint there whatsoever. And I was just able to come in and burn dark and then lighten up around the fur, the stripes, and transition it into the lighter fur. The color pencils, when I come back in, they really just allow the fur to kind of come alive and look more luxurious. You could even come back with the gel pen and create some little gray hairs or smaller hairs around the eyes and the forehead. So it's really up to you what you would like to put over your wood burning. Now, of course, a lot of people just like the pure wood burning in itself. They don't want to have any other colors. They just want the richness of the wood with the contrast of the shadows created by the nib. And that's perfectly fine. That's the beauty of art, is that you're able to personalize it in any way that you want and reach out to any kind of crowd that would be appealed to your artwork. So here you can see I used the side of the nib to create the whiskers, and I do not slow down. I start with a little freckle and I press and then I drag it, and as I'm getting to the end of the whisker, I kind of do a flick or a lift. And that's just a neat trick you can practice with a mechanical pencil. And with a mechanical pencil, it's the same technique. You're holding it, applying a little bit more pressure, and then as you're getting to the end of the whisker, you just do a little flourish and flick. And it just makes them look a lot more natural and more of a cat hair whisker than if you were coming back and forth with the pencil or a nib and trying to create the whiskers. To me, the whiskers is what really brings the wood burning to life, makes it almost like you could come in and pet the cat. Even wolves and donkeys and horses and cows have whiskers. And so it's always important after you wood burn and you sand around the area to come back and add those little loose hairs, because that just really allows to have a little bit more contrast with the wood and the subject that you are wood burning. So for the most part, as I'm working on this piece, I'm just really enjoying burning in each little individual hair. If I don't want the hairs in some areas, like if I want to leave it more white, you can, and that's perfectly fine. If you're using watercolor, you need to be very careful, because as you come back with a varnish and you've applied watercolor over your wood burning, or you burned over the watercolor, as you come in with that varnish and you streak across the surface of the wood, you can actually reactivate the watercolor and lift it up and then streak it across your piece. So I had done that. I was wood burning on a box and I wanted to make the flowers pop out a little bit more, so I came back with some watercolor, and I highly regretted it. And I was trying to be very careful about not pressing too hard with a paintbrush and reactivating the watercolor. But because it's not on paper, it's sitting on the surface of the wood, the pigment is a lot more sensitive to water and will reactivate a lot faster. So just be very careful. I learned a lot from my mistakes, and I had to come back in with some sandpaper and sand out those streaks. And then I came back with acrylic and I just touched it up, and then I was able to come back in and brush over with my varnish. Once you've applied varnish, you cannot go back and wood burn over it. Varnish is a chemical, and you do not want to breathe that in while you're wood burning. I have a fan and a vent going on while I'm wearing a mask when I'm working, so I just need to be extra careful with my lungs. I'm an art teacher, so I'm already exposed to clay dust, and I don't need wood dust, and I don't need chemical particles in my lungs because I like to breathe. MDF board, I heard one student said that they wanted to wood burn on a piece, and I was just absolutely adamant. I said it can cause cancer if you wood burn over that, because it's pretty much basically like a fiber. And when you wood burn over anything that's been chemically treated or pressure treated, the chemicals have been soaked into the fiber of the wood, and they're meant for housing construction. So don't use anything like that if you're wanting to make cutting boards or serving trays. And a lot of times the treated wood almost has like a greenish tint to it, or a bluish. And so they're a little bit easier to spot, and they always kind of tend to feel wet when you put your hand on them, because they just have those chemicals saturated into the wood fibers. Plywood is also not very good to wood burn unless you're wearing a mask. I saw one artist, he would have a big giant piece of plywood and he would screw it into a wall and then come in with a torch and wood burn. And that's perfectly fine, and as you can see in his videos, he's wearing a very good thorough mask. So it's just, making sure that you protect your body before you do anything. The neat thing with pyrography is it basically means writing with fire. And I don't have the best handwriting. I have some pretty bad handwriting my students complain about all the time. But I can have pretty good control when I'm wood burning. And I almost don't even lift my hand off the wood. I'm just kind of coming in and just creating quick little tap, tap, taps to create that fur texture. But for the most part, it goes by quick. People look at my pieces and think I've spent hundreds of hours on them. But with the muscle memory in my hand, I pretty much come in and I can just wood burn very quickly. My first couple pieces did take a long time, but once I got the technique down, I just would sit, plug in for a few hours each night, and I would have a very nice complicated piece done. So art is just like a sport. The more you practice, the better you get at it. So if you feel like your first two pieces weren't very good, but you have the heart and you want to try it and stick with it, I highly recommend it. A lot of times it takes many, many failures and learning from your mistakes before you finally have the art form down. And so I tell my students that, I'm like, this is amazing for your first attempt, and just imagine what you could be like after your 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th piece of the same medium. If you are really good with ballpoint pen or scratchboard, pyrography is definitely for you. So hopefully you enjoyed this little pyrography 101. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below, and please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.